We have what we would say, four iconic figures to end the evening before we go on to our festivities. And we're combining two sessions, actually. The first session is the journey to prosperity, and the second session is shaping the future on the platform of lessons from history, reflections from Africa and the Caribbean. And those the two panelists from each of them will come together to discuss those futures, how we look to the past on a journey to prosperity. Now, the honor of moderating it goes to a young lady who is doing a lot in the field of African development. She's the founder of an organization called Leading Light Initiative. She's going to tell you who I'm talking about. So please welcome Ms. Vivian Onano.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Fantastic. My name is Vivian Onano. I'm a Kenyan and the founder and director at Leading Light Initiative. It's an honor to be part of this year's Afreximbank annual meeting. Thanks to His Excellency, Professor Benedict Arama and his team for the opportunity. I'm very excited about this session on the journey to prosperity, because we'll be hearing directly from four exceptional leaders. These leaders have shown us what Black excellence is about and how they're using that to transform the countries and continent at large. Their success is not only individual success, they're working hard to make it as inclusive as possible through the various initiatives that they're championing. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I welcome my distinguished panelists on stage. The first one, His Excellency Dr. Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you, Excellency. Next is His Excellency Honorable Ralph Everald Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines. Next on stage is His Excellency Professor Benedict Arama, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors at Afreximbank. Last but not least is Mr. Tony Elumelu, Chairman United Bank for Africa Group, Transcorp Group, Heirs Holding, and the founder of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. So for this session, we're going to look at the journey to prosperity. These incredible, outstanding leaders from Africa and the Caribbean have led initiatives, they've championed initiatives, led countries, and supported the people in various activities. Your Excellency, President Obasanjo, African history is probably the longest, as archaeologists, one after the other, have been telling us. But in a nutshell, what will be your summary of African history, and how can we use it to harness the potential of our people?
Thank you very much. Let me start by congratulating Afreximbank, and particularly the president of the bank, Professor Rama, for celebrating the 30th anniversary, but particularly for the marvelous job he has done as the CEO of Afreximbank in the last 8 years. As a follower of the bank, I really appreciate the progress the bank has made. And I was particularly happy that this morning, when the President of the Republic of Ghana addressed us, he commended the effort, but he made two important observations. One is that the capital base of the bank is still small to deal with the gigantic responsibility and obligation that the bank has. But I know that President Orama will live up to the expectation. I also, of course, want to welcome our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. This is the first time we are having you the way we have had you on this occasion. My sister, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and the Prime Minister of Bahamas, and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent. I again see this as renaissance of Pan-Africanism, which, of course, we had just before we came to the podium. We have the daughter of Nkrumah. We have the son of Gaze. And earlier on in the day, the Prime Minister of Barbados mentioned Padmore. All these were Pan-Africanists before the Pan-Africanists of today. And going back and bringing them back into our present day, it then takes us back into history. And so when you talk about history, our history is interwoven. We cannot separate the history of Africa from the history of the Africans in diaspora. They are together. And that is the first point I want to make. And the good and the bad in our history must be taken together. We cannot separate them. And one of the things that we have not done too well in the past is we have not really taken our history as we should take it. Because history is like memory. If you lose your memory, you won't even remember what you ate last night, and that will be bad. So history and experience together gave us wisdom, and they are meant to inform our present and to guide our future. Now, what is the history of Africa? The archaeologists and the anthropologists have told us that actually human life began here in Africa. So all of us, as human beings, no matter where we live, Africa is our home, the beginning of our life. Now, if that is the case, I should feel proud that I am actually on the continent, on the land where human life began. You should feel proud that your root is from the land where human life began. Now, if we get that history right and we progress from there, then what are the things that we can now learn from history to inform our present and to guide our future. First, we are the race that has suffered most in the history of human being. We suffered from slavery, we suffered from slave trade, we suffered from colonialism, we suffered from neo-colonialism, and we are still suffering even today. Now, if we do not keep this at the back of our mind, which means making us to remember history, then we will not. We will be suffering from amnesia. And if we are suffering from amnesia by forgetting the past, then history will repeat itself. Now, I would say, may God never repeat itself as far as all the bad things that have happened to us as black people in the world. Now, if we are not going to, history is not going to repeat itself, we must know what we have suffered. Now, we then must prevent reoccurrence of what has happened to us. And that means, first, coming together, whether we are on African continent, in the diaspora, we have to come together, because our not coming together means that we will sink separately. If we come together, we will swim together. And that is very, very important. Now, the world doesn't feel that they owe us anything, but we can get as much out of the world as we try to get out of the world. Now, what do we then need to do? We need to know what is our interest, and we have to guard our interest jealously. We have to make sure that we keep our own interest. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago, a European leader, and I was a little bit unhappy. I said, look, friend, you people are unfair to us. You say, Olu, calling me by my first name. He said, who are the people? I said, you, European leaders. He said, why are you so unfair? What have we done to be unfair to us? I said, look at the economy. It's all stuck against us. Oh, he said, Olu, I must tell you, you should know that we devised and designed capitalism for ourselves, not for you. And that is right. And that is true. They devised capitalism for themselves. They designed it for themselves. They design it in their interest and not for us. Now, if we know that, what should we do? How should we handle capitalism to be in our interest? And when I took him on, he said, look, I said, look, for humanity's sake, he said, humanity's sake, bring me your economics book and show me where humanity is a factor of production. Now, I don't see where humanity is a factor of production. And he's right. But then, if humanity is not a factor of production, as my sister, the Prime Minister of Barbados, said in the morning, now all the things they say we should not do, they do for themselves. Now, you should not subsidize agriculture. I have a friend in UK I believe he is a sheep and goat farmer. Sheep and goat farmer. I think he's getting at least $1 or $2 per goat every year as subsidy for keeping goat, whether they die or live, or whether they eat or drink. He's getting that. And they will say to us, you cannot subsidize agriculture. If you cannot subsidize agriculture, how do we? And they can subsidize and supply to us. And so they depress our own, they keep their own, and they make us recipient, not producer. And then this is part of the history from the creation or from the advent of human being on African soil up till today. We are being cheated. It is up to us to say we are being cheated enough. We will come together. When we come together, we will put a solid front to make sure that we are able to withstand any attack.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for those second points on the importance of us preserving our history and remembering our history for the future, because if we forget about history, then we're bound to repeat it. And you made some critical points on the importance of history and experience. They are meant to inform the present and guide our future. And the history of the Africans and the Caribbeans are interwoven. So, to Your Excellency, Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister, so you are one of the longest standing Prime Ministers in the Caribbean. And today there's been a lot of conversations around how African and the Caribbean are coming together. We had the first Africa-Caribbean Business Summit Forum last year, and there's another one coming up. We're trying to find direct flights from Africa to the Caribbean, trying to sort out the visa issue. What have you learned from the history, and what do you think we need to do right now to speed up that process of bridging the gap between the Caribbean and the African for prosperity?
Thank you very much. I'm, first of all, very honored to be here with Baba, an icon. And I pay my respect to my elder with love. And love is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. I'd like to begin by quoting a poem about history and the future, written by a poet from my country now dead, Daniel Williams. You'll find it in several Caribbean anthologies of poetry, called We Are the Cenotaphs. And he begins it by saying, we are all time, yet only the future is ours to desecrate. The present is the past, and the past, our fathers' mischiefs. Well, the part about the fathers' mischiefs identifies that we have been having quite a patriarchy for a long time, and that is being changed now. We see Sister Mia and other comrade sisters taking the front line in contemporary politics, and the women in Africa and the Caribbean have come of age in important leadership positions. Now, how do we avoid the desecration of the future? I want to suggest in simple terms, we have to listen to our grandfather and our grandmother, our fathers and our mothers, and we have to listen to our sons and our daughters. And through the fever of history, all of us have become compromises. And out of the compromises that history, the fever of history has made us, what is the purpose of it? What we have to do is to make a whole son and a whole daughter out of the compromises which the fever of history has made us. Europe is also compromised. Europe has remade the Caribbean and Africa, and in the process, remade itself. It hasn't yet quite understood that it has remade itself. But if they watch the streets of London and Paris any day of the week, they will see the nature of the population that go by, and the various colors, and the way that we are witnessing a browning of the world. But they are yet to come to terms with that. And so, there are some of those who fear it in the United States of America. And they say they want to make America great again. What they want to do is to make America white again. But it has never been white. So they're looking forward to a past which has never been, which would mean that their future is behind them. Now, the Caribbean and Africa were joined, and North America, from the moment in 1619, the first group of enslaved African bodies were forcibly taken from the west coast of Africa to Virginia. And that began a process of some 20 million Africans being torn away from their homes and put into chattel slavery. And that enslavement and the extraction of the resources from the Caribbean, from Latin America, and from Africa built Europe. If you're in any doubt about it, you read Eric Williams' How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Sorry, how Capitalism and Slavery. And if you want to know how Africa was underdeveloped, read Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, which are two critical treatises in this discussion. And that is why, in this contemporary period, in seeking to make a whole daughter and a whole son out of the fever of this history, there has to be the demand, and it is a legitimate demand which we in CARICOM have made. And we have established the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and we have a 10-point plan for reparatory justice that we have to demand as an absolute necessity and desirability reparations for native genocide and the enslavement of African bodies. And that conversation, the time has come for it to be treated with earnestness, because it's not going to go away. Remember this: reparations for native genocide and enslavement of African bodies. Now, in 1945, you may recall that there was a Pan-African Congress in Manchester. There are a number of important African leaders were there. Jomo Kenyatta, George Padma was there, C.L.R. James was there. But even before that, we had Edward Blyden, we had Sylvester Williams, Du Bois, and we have the greatest African of the 20th century in the diaspora, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who mobilized the largest group of persons of African descent, a movement that this world had never seen before and has not seen afterwards in the diaspora. And we heard the influences of Garvey on Kwame Nkrumah and also on Malcolm X, if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X. 1945, that conference was about freeing Africa from colonialism and also the Caribbean from colonialism. In 1945, there were 2 states in Africa which were quote-unquote independent. At least the sub-Saharan Africa. We had Ethiopia and Liberia. And the struggle since then had been for independence, political independence, and after that, there's been the struggle for economic independence and justice and for sustainable development in Africa and also in the Caribbean. But there was an important struggle in the 1970s, well, several important struggles in the 1970s. There was the struggle for the independence of Angola, struggle for the independence of Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome and the Principe. But I want to zero in on Angola because it took people from the Caribbean, from Cuba, to come to Angola at the invitation of Agostinho Neto's MPLA to bolster the independence, to fight for the independence and the maintenance of the independence of Angola. And at the famous Battle of Cueto Valley, where the Cubans and the Angolans defeated the racist South African regime and the allies in Angola, in southern Angola. And Nelson Mandela made the point that it is the Battle of Cueto Valley, the victory by the MPLA and the Cubans, that helped to open his cell door in South Africa, and which led eventually to majority rule in South Africa under Nelson Mandela as the first democratically elected president of South Africa. That's where you have a joinder between Caribbean people. I want to say this. And we are talking about the solidarity with Africa. I want you to have the solidarity with a Caribbean country which has been suffering from terrific blows of imperialism and a criminal, illegal embargo. Cuba. Cuban blood was shed in Angola for the independence of Angola. Is the only army of personnel, military people who ever came to Africa and left without taking anything. They fought, they left, they didn't go for any of the mines in Cabinda, they didn't take a bank in Angola, they left. And then what did they do? They sent doctors and engineers and nurses to help to rebuild war-torn Angola. The lesson in history is solidarity. Solidarity. Today, I read all about, they say, my body, my choice. There's a pristine individualism. They don't want to consider any, as though they live in a society by themselves. They preach that. That's what liberalism tries to tell us about. The individual and just the individual alone. But the atomized individual, an individual separate and distinct, can only bring about for Africa and the Caribbean nothing but disaster. What you have achieved, and you have achieved much, and you and me, only achieve them because of the solidarity of persons who put the money to help to educate us and brought us up as sons and brought up daughters so that we can live together to help to build these societies in a sustainable manner. Solidarity. So I want you to cut out this naked, atomized individualism. You don't live by yourself, you live in a society. And that is where the solidarity comes in with the Afreximbank. That's where it comes in with our political solidarity at the United Nations and all the rest of it. If history teaches one thing, we have to work together, because the powerful states, they do what they can, and those of us who are smaller, weaker states, we suffer what we must. Well, now is the time for us to be in solidarity with one another, to struggle for what is ours. We see the world through the prism of our own eyes and build our Caribbean and build our Africa in unity, and the Caribbean and Latin American unity. I just want to make one final point.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Let me make this one final point. I don't have to say anything else today. I just want to make this one final point. There are certain people who think that 1 billion plus, the golden 1 billion, important as they are in North America and Europe, 2 states in North America, the United Kingdom, and 27 countries of the European Union. That's 30 states, 1 billion people. But you have 650 million in Latin America and the Caribbean. You have 1.4 million in Africa. You have 1.4 million in India, 1.4 in China, in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, nearly 600 million. You have Pakistan and Bangladesh, and you have the Arab world, and you have the ancient civilization of the Persians in Iran, which is 90 million. Then you have Russia, which is 150 million. In the rest of the world, there are 7 billion people separate and distinct from the golden billion. The golden billion, which has been ruling us since the 18th century and remade this world. Well, no, we're not saying that we must toss them aside. No, that is not fair nor reasonable. But our time has come. And there are 7 billion people outside of that golden billion. And we have to claim our share of Mother Earth in the interest of our own humanization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister, for your passionate and insightful contribution. And we'll remember the importance of solidarity for our prosperity. Your Excellency, Professor Rama, first and foremost, congratulations on Afreximbank's 30th anniversary. The presence of all these incredible men and women in the room is a clear testament to your great leadership at the bank. Under your leadership, Afreximbank has had tremendous success. What are some of the initiatives that you have had to put in place to ensure that there's shared prosperity now and continuity post your leadership tenure at the bank?
Oh, thank you very much. Let me first thank Baba, thank Raf, thank Tony for joining us on this panel. Very, very important panel, because I like history. I'm a student of history. And as I answer this question, I will also allude to history, because we use the lessons of history to shape our visions for tomorrow. For me, I look at history as the moral compass of the committed. And because that is the way we view history all across the bank, what has happened in Afreximbank is that we've had transitions that have built on the successes of the previous. I'm the 3rd president of the bank. But what I'm doing now some of them were conceived by the first president. So we recognize that we have the chain, that the development process is a continuum, that to transform structurally, you need time. You cannot have a structural transformation as a sprint. It's a long race. And that is why the continuity is important. And as I complete my term, we're also making sure that that continues. Because the big project we have going on in the bank today is to document the history now properly, because we know that some of us who were there from the beginning are going to go away. So we need to have an institutional memory to preserve some of the key things that are driving us. If you listen to my speech, I said in the morning that Bakandeye postulated a hypothesis that you could pursue development using commercial approaches and profitably. 30 years of Afreximbank proved that hypothesis. But if you don't document it, somebody else will tell a different story. And it is also important that we use history to drive our business all the time. I give you 2 or 3 examples. I know we're running out of time. If I was with Baba for some time, and I asked Baba that one of the things that I think of when I'm trying to do difficult things is, who are those who did difficult things in the past? And I said, Baba, how come you had the courage to nationalize British Petroleum, to force them to grant independence to Zimbabwe? Nobody ever thought that was possible. And he told me the story. And the outcome was clear. If Baba didn't do that, I don't know whether the struggle for independence in Africa would have taken a different trajectory. Few people know what Dr. Babaka Ndiaye did at the African Development Bank to also bring the appetite South African government to its knees. Dr. Babaka Ndiaye was running a big African Development Bank that was issuing bonds and had control over so many other things, at least in Africa. He had to go to one of the leading investment banks in the US to say to them, if you did a refinance of a particular bond South Africans issued, we will not mandate you anymore. That bank did not support that refinance. And South African government, I think, defaulted on their bond. And that changed the economic situation in South Africa. So unless we knew all these things, we would not know the importance of the kind of things we have to deal with as entities running businesses, not as politicians this time. So in essence, even as a business, as a politician, as a priest, as whatever you are on the continent, it is history that will help you have the courage, have the vision to make transformative decisions if you want to make them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Professor Rama. You've driven a point on it's important for us to use history to drive our business. And that takes me to Mr. Elumelu. You're one of the outstanding and successful entrepreneurs from Africa. What are some of the key ingredients that have contributed to your amazing career and experience? Please take us through your journey to prosperity.
So I'm very honored to be on this panel with great leaders and our elders and people who have made today's world a better place for us. But I'm sure when His Excellency was speaking, I was talking about MPLA, you wish that history was more properly written, and what you and General Murtala Mohammed did about MPLA. Well, it's a challenge to the world for us to tell the story. But it's very interesting listening to this. So for my story, I think there's no, after listening to leaders and they talk about solidarity, history, all of us coming together, I don't think there's any one star. But since I've been asked a question, for me, it's a humble beginning. I think I see opportunities where maybe some don't. I think I see potential where some don't. I see my success not being hindrance or obstacle to other people's successes. And I believe that my success should be a catalyst for others to succeed. I have had my own setbacks, so it's not about just success only. But I see those setbacks as opportunities to learn. At times, very hard setbacks. And I see learnings like learning in resilience, learning in patience, learning in tenacity. And that is why, for me, I support young ones. That is why I always say that the future of our continent and the world indeed belongs to our young ones. I have dreams, I have vision, but they are anchored on or in reality. Some years ago, we took over a distressed bank. We turned around the distressed bank. We grew it to some level. And then one man was the president of Nigeria at the time. And he believed in young ones who were in our 30s. And he committed to providing opportunities, which is what leaders must do, which is what we must also do for young Africans, young African men and women. And the enabling environment was very encouraging. And we moved on from small bank. We were able to merge with the third biggest bank in Nigeria at the time that was over 75 years in the operations. And that created today's United Bank for Africa PLC. And this was in 2005. And since we are talking about history here, I believe you all know who was president of Nigeria in 2005. Why are you looking that way, sir? And so from there, we started. And I say to people also, people should always, entrepreneurs should always be ready for opportunities. You should be prepared so that when opportunities meet preparedness, you take advantage and you grow bigger. And so today, that is how we started. It's a long journey, and we've done quite a lot with us beginning. Today, a lot. So there's a book coming, and that book will tell all the stories. I know we don't have more time, but let me just say a few things with this platform. First is this talk about prosperity, on our continent is everyone's responsibility. Young ones, government, private sector, social private sector, Friends of Africa, development community. We all must work together to make sure that we create a better future for everyone, because poverty anywhere is a threat to all of us everywhere. And we should think less about ourselves at some level, more about legacy, and more about impact and imparting humanity in a positive way. And for our young ones, I want to say tenacity, I'm a student of that, resilience, patience, hard work, discipline. These are critical ingredients for success. These are things that have helped us to get to where we are today, and things that don't fail anyone in the area of entrepreneurship and everything. So I want to use this opportunity finally to say well done to Afrexim. As Baba said, under your leadership, you have helped to unleash a lot of entrepreneurism in Africa through the seed, the capital as you've provided to private sector leaders who have used it to create employment on our continent. The AFCTA is also another great initiative and support of your organization, driving payments and code. These are things that will help us drive industrialization, economic development, self-sufficient and self-reliance. Means we should be able to trade amongst ourselves, but first feed ourselves, and also be able to offer what we need on the continent. So well done to Afrexim, well done to you and your team. We are proud of what you guys have achieved, and I wish you more years and decades of existence. And I'm happy that you remember the history of Afrexim, and you gave a recognition to those who started us. People will also tell your story in future. Well done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu, for sharing with us your incredible journey so far, and also bringing in the aspect of young people, because this continent and the Caribbean continent, the future is the young people, and it's important to invest in the young people. Again, thank you again to my panelists for sharing the rich history. I wish we had a whole day to just continue with this conversation, but thank you for reminding us the importance of solidarity for prosperity, and also the fact that prosperity is everyone's business, both the senior and the younger generation, and also the importance of history in shaping our vision, but also for transformational change in our societies. Once again, please put your hands together for my incredible panelists.
Thank you, Tony.
And Vivian, put your hands together. She was thrown in at the last moment. Wonderful moderating from a great young moderator. Where's the photographer? Are you awake? Yeah, take some pictures. There are 4 legends here. If I can ask you all to stand together. Gentlemen, please stand together. Let's get a family photo here. That's one for the memory books. Okay. If I could ask you, gentlemen, just to stand there. Tony's being demiked. Tony, there's another session after this just with you and me. Ladies and gentlemen, your 4 great connectors.